Welcome everybody to Heritage Disc Golf Course in Belton, Texas. This is shot-by-shot coverage of Ryan Smith's third round at the NADGT Championships.
Next up on the tee, Ryan Smith.
Red. This first hole is a 388-foot par 3. There are two lines you could take, a big hyzer out to the right side to get into that fairway you see out there, or to pitch up to this short landing area for another second shot under a low canopy, and that's the path that Ryan elects to go. You can see on his second shot, he's lining up a backhand through this gap. There's not a lot of space there, but he clears it, gets it a little low, runs up a little bit, but he wanted a little bit more air under it, a little bit more flight. He's just inside of circle one, probably about a 27-foot putt. Don't usually want to test her like that at the start of your round, but smoothly nails it. Starting with a par. Hole 2 is a 492-foot par 4. From this angle, you can't really see the gap, but there is a gap through two pretty large trees that are about 250 feet out. You want to hit that gap, get out into the clearing where you'll have about another 240, 250 foot upshot to a hill. You see that Red pulls it out to the right a little bit, but lands in a pretty good spot. Lining up his zone forehand approach here. He's going to aim out left. See it kind of come back, and there's one little skinny tree at the top of the hill that it hits and kind of stalls out. From this high approach angle, he just throws a scuba down. I was a little late to get the recording started, so you see he lands right there at the bucket, nails a kneel putt for another par. Hole 3 is a 223-foot par 3 that is blind to the basket. There is barely an opening right there with some OB on a down slope. So you have to make sure you clear the slope and get down low. Red throws this force over Annie that hits a couple trees but ends up landing safe. You can see this little OB line just to the right of him. Again, another forehand approach shot. Hits this tree, bounces off to the left, but no harm, no foul. Just a little 8-foot putt to finalize another par to start his round with 3 straight pars. Hole 4 is a 445-foot par 4, one of the more picturesque holes on the course. You have this very long, narrow tunnel shot, then a little bit of a field to get through to a basket sitting on top of a hill going into the round. Red talked about this being probably the scariest hole on the course for him. The potential for a high score is incredibly high because there's OB all down the left side, and bouncing to the right isn't great either because of all the trees. Red throws a very flat, even mid-range down the fairway and hits the dirt, skids to the left a little bit, but he's in a great spot for another approach. The zoom doesn't really help a lot here, but he lands at the bottom of this hill, and you can see that his head is even with the base of the basket. So this is a huge uphill putt with disaster potential if he were to airball it one way or the other. But instead, he nails it for his first birdie of the round to get to 1 under through 4. Hole 5 is an 800-foot par 5 that is very generous as a par 5 for such a short distance. But there is a gap that you need to hit. You need to choose if you're just going to throw all the way around the left of this tree on the left with some big anhyzer or a roller play, or you can try to throw a forehand down this middle gap and have it flare out to the right beyond that second tree, or you can try to throw a backhand through the gap on the right. You can see that Red throws his forehand and misses his gap on the left, so he hits the tree and drops right down there on the trunk. Now he's got a kneel under it and doesn't really have good footing, doesn't have a chance to get a full shot, so he's lining up something under the branches from a kneel, full body layout to get probably 150 feet out of that throw. Lines up a wide open shot, still has a birdie opportunity, but chooses to not go full send because there is OB danger behind the basket there. Gets to about 100 feet probably, throws his approach. You can see he's disappointed that it doesn't go right like he wants at the end, so it hits the bottom of the hill, lands off to the side a little bit. Now he has to have this putt for a par save, and he nails it. So sitting 1 under through 5. Hole 6 is a 428-foot par 3, which normally would be a pretty lengthy par 3 for a lot of amateurs, but this path makes it even more difficult. There's a very thin straight gap to the basket between these two trees, or you can take this forehand route out to the left. Red was trying to get left of that tree and get past it, but had it on a little bit too much hyzer. Falls out a little bit early, hits the tree. Luckily, he is a little bit behind the tree, so he has room to throw this backhand approach. Puts it to within 12 feet to line up another easy par save, which he banks. So, again, 1 under through 6. Hole 7 is a 476-foot par 3. You can barely see the basket way off in the distance on the left side. There's a tree on the right, so you have this gap that you're trying to hit. Now, our entire tournament was split up into 3 groups, Pool A, Pool B, and Pool C, separated mostly by rating, so the highest rated players were in Pool A. They played this course on Friday, day 2, and nobody got a birdie. Granted, there was quite a bit of wind, but no one got it, and in today's round, only one person got the birdie, the person who ended up shooting 12 down and having an insane round today. So really, really tough hole to reach. You see Red have to restart because if you go back and look, his left plant foot kind of slips off the side, so he stops, resets himself, maybe still thinking about it a little bit, doesn't quite get the hyzer out of the disc that he wants, it turns over a little bit, goes right. You can see he actually gets pretty close to OB. The little white OB flags are right there behind him, about 10 feet away. But another backhand approach that he puts on a great line, great speed, parks it, easy par tap in, stays 1 under. Hole 8 is a 488-foot par 4, which could easily be listed as a really difficult par 3 or plays as a fairly easy par 4. There's a landing zone that you can see in the middle of the screen that you want to get to that creates a pretty easy upshot. Red hits that landing zone perfectly. A couple guys on the card launched it about 40 to 50 feet farther. Kind of some circle 2 opportunities, but you see Red throws another backhand approach out to the right. Doesn't like it because there is OB right there. You can't see the flags, but it was pretty close. So Red had to snuggle up in the trees there, get in another kneel, get set, makes his birdie putt to get to 2 under. Hole 9 is a 397-foot par 3 through this tunnel. Not a super narrow tunnel, there's plenty of space. Going forehand, you want to flex it out to the left a little bit and have it die right. The basket is up a little bit on a hill, so hitting that angle is pretty important. It's very easy to overturn it left or have it hyzer out right. You see Red has his kind of float up a little bit and ends up on the left side, but creates a pretty easy upshot opportunity. Just needs to make sure his disc hits with the right angle on the hill. You see it bounce up, and it does. He's satisfied with that. Has another pretty easy par tap-in opportunity for the straddle and to stay 2 down on the front 9. The back 9, hole 10, starts with a 689-foot par 4. Huge wide open space, but the fairway is flanked by 2 OB lines, so there is a line that you have to hit. Red doesn't want to overthrow anything too much, so he just sends out a fairway driver on hyzer. Doesn't get a ton of distance, but does land in the middle. So for his second shot, pulls out a high-speed driver, throws it out to the right. You can see the basket is right in there behind the trees. The disc fades out a little bit too much to the left. Doesn't have a great opportunity to go at the basket. Has another just easy approach and tap in for par to start his back 9. Hole 11 is a 293-foot par 3 to an island. The island is pretty big. You see that path. The OB is anything just short of that. He has to land on the island or it goes to a drop zone. There is kind of a small window here. You don't want to throw too high to hit the branches. Red throws right through the middle of it. Hits just on the other side of the path. Slides up perfectly. to kind of the middle of the hill, so he has about a 25-foot putt, gauging the wind, which ends up being a little bit swirly. You can see a lot of the stuff flying left and right on screen. Gets it a little bit too high, hits the top of the band, falls over the top, but doesn't float away too far, only about 8 feet coming back, and saves an easy par again to stay 2 under on his round. Hole 12 is a 375-foot par 3, possibly one of the trickiest drives on the entire course. Wide open field, but a very thin, maybe 15-foot wide gap. If you finish left or right, very hard to have a look at the basket. Red throws a mid-range out to the right side, expecting it to fade a little bit more. Gets caught up, so he doesn't have a clean look. Has a weird step out that's hard to angle over. You can see he's frustrated that it doesn't get over as much as he wants, but still gets almost pin high, about 18 feet maybe to the basket. Nails center chains. Wants a birdie there, but a par is not bad to stay at 2 under. Hole 13 is one of the more well-known holes at this course because it's a 399-foot par 4 that is just through trees after trees after trees. You can't see the basket from the tee. You know that you have to hit one of these very small gaps. There is kind of a path down the middle. Probably only gets you about 200 feet before things get really tricky. So Red's trying to go there. Disc releases a little bit early. You can't even see the disc because it stays on the left side. Hits some gap that doesn't even seem to exist. Again, the approach is really tricky because still can't see the basket. Lots of stuff in the way. Throws a little forehand placement shot. Now we can finally see the basket. And he's lining up a tricky backhand that he hopes it gets pin high. Still has to hit 2 or 3 gaps on this throw. Gets the disc to turn over perfectly. Hops up to see where it gets, and it's parked. So Red taps in for a remarkable par. Stays 2 down. Amazingly, the card was even on that hole with 2 pars, a bogey, and a birdie on a 100-foot throw-in. So that was pretty awesome to watch. Move on to hole 14, a 354-foot par 3. There is a gap that you have to throw to. This angle does not show it very well, but you got to throw a forehand dead straight through the gap and have it fly out to the right. This is the windmill hole. There is a windmill up by the basket that if you actually hit it, you're in a pretty good spot. So Red's throw hyzers out a little bit early, so he's outside circle 2, just another backhand approach that he lays up pretty well to about a 10-foot putt, another par, still 2 down through 14. Hole 15 is a 620-foot par 4 that you just want to get as much distance as possible off the tee, hoping to end a little bit right because the upshot, the basket is up the hill through a gap. If you don't have an angle, it's very tough to get there. Red throws his backhand. It fades out a little early because it's a little bit high, so his angle at the basket now is extremely difficult. He's trying to throw a mid-range out to the right that will come back and hopefully be at the bottom of the hill at the entry to this path. Sends it a little far, ends up by a bush, so he has to do another kind of weird step out. This time he has a little bit better of an angle, hoping to line up his shot here. Possible throw-in attempt, but really doesn't want to do anything too crazy. Gets it the right height, finishes a little bit right, so coming back down, kneeling, easy par save again, still holding on to that 2 under score. Hole 16 is the shortest hole on the course, 235-foot par 3. Right up there on top of the hill, you can see this tree just in front of the tee pad, even has some turf on it to protect it from getting whacked. So you want to avoid that. Red lining up a shot up the middle. You can see it kind of carries, hits the top of the hill, takes a bounce, rolls, looks like it might end up in a bad spot, but he actually ends up in a perfect spot, 10 feet away from the basket for a birdie putt. Nails it, 3 down, still a clean round through 16 holes, heading into hole 17. 577-foot par 4, again, coming out of the forest through a gap. You want to make sure that you get a lot of distance. You can either be short and right and have an upshot to this hill that you'll see in a second, or you can just be super long and go around the backside. Unfortunately, red hits this tree that's right outside the opening, so he has a pretty big shot to have to get into a good spot. Looks like it's going a good way, but kind of fades out early. Ends up at the base of the hill with these trees in the way. He has an opportunity to throw the putt if he wants, but you can see this really small turf up top, so he just scoobers it up there, so he has an easy tap-in par. Once again, heading into the last hole. Hole 18, a daunting 465-foot par 3 uphill, trees lining the right side, OB on the left, OB on the right. Takes a huge shot just to get in any kind of position. Red bombs a forehand, ends up in a great spot. Could have been a little bit better if it was more out left or farther. Has this awkward kind of step out again around this tree. He's probably still another 100 feet away, but he executes it perfectly again. You can see it land right at the base of the basket for another tap in, finishing his round at 3 down and a great tournament.